Mr
Chairman, what the government has tried to do with this legislation is frame the argument about whether or not we should have a convention centre. That is an argument, sir, in its own right. It is not what the debate in this bill is about. There could well be a good argument for a convention centre, but if you're going to set up a convention centre, this is not the only way, and it's certainly not the best way, and actually it's not an acceptable way to fund that convention centre, Mr Speaker. Labor doesn't oppose having a convention centre, but we oppose the process and we oppose the implications, the consequences of the government acting in the way that it has. Mr Speaker, what I object to first of all about this deal is that it was a dirty deal carried out by the Prime Minister in contravention of ethical, transparent, open and fair processes that one would normally associate with the public sector. The Prime Minister didn't take simply a casual approach to his involvement in this. He met twice himself with Sky City. He had his Chief of Staff meet with Sky City. His staff met on 5 occasions with them, and the Prime Minister issued an instruction. The instruction was to put on hold any dealings with other bidders for the convention centre till he worked out a dirty deal with Sky City. That's not proper, that's not correct, it's wrong. It's so wrong that the Auditor-General decided that she would hold an inquiry into how this was carried out. And John Key, breaking ethics again, long before the report came out, said this report will totally vindicate me. That was the language that he used. This report would totally vindicate me. Mr Chairman, it did nothing of the sort. Instead, the Auditor-General said there were clear deficiencies on the part of ministers and officials. And she uses very considered language, but the meaning is very clear. Listen to this, Mr Chairman. The Auditor-General, we do not consider the evaluation process was transparent or even-handed. That's the Auditor-General's considered language. What it meant was, in effect, she was saying that the Prime Minister was doing a dirty deal for his cronies, and that's exactly what this deal represents. It's a mark of shame on this government. Mr Chairman, the second concern that I have about what this bill encompasses is that it binds this Parliament for 35 years. It gives special privileges to Sky City that will last until 2048. And I warrant this, Mr Chairman, you won't be here in 2048, I won't be here. In fact, there won't, well, maybe Trevor Mallard, he has an incredible longevity, but I warrant this, there won't be a single member of this House in this chamber while this deal continues to provide benefits to Sky City. There won't be any officials that are currently working here. It is unprecedented that a government would enter into a deal that gives privileges for 35 years and tries to lock it in so that any future Parliament that looks back at this deal and says, this is crazy, this cannot in any way be justified, it makes it really hard for the Parliament to get out of that deal. In fact, it puts a financial penalty on the taxpayer when this contract is replaced, as most certainly it needs to do. This government will be remembered in the same way that Robert Muldoon is remembered for what he did in 1976 about superannuation. This national government will be remembered for a deal that was wrong, a deal that was inappropriately negotiated, a deal that was a millstone around the head of New Zealanders and which will cost them just to get out of it, Mr Speaker. I want to say that the critical clause in this bill is clause 6.2, and it reads, the regulatory concessions prevail if a regulatory concession is inconsistent with any provision of the gambling law and the application of the provision of the gambling law is modified accordingly. That is very clear language that says this dirty deal prevails, Mr Chairman. This dirty deal prevails over the provisions of the 2003 Gambling Act that will cover every other institution and individual that's involved in the business of gambling. This is a special deal for Sky City. But what I object to most about this, Mr Chairman, is that it ignores the costs of gambling. I've got in my hand the regulatory impact statement, and it says right up front in the beginning that the potential impact that this may have in increasing the incidence of problem gambling and its associated harm for New Zealand society is a key concern. On the front page, it tries not to quantify that, but it does it later on in the report. This is the impact of the deal that every one of those national members is seeking to impose on New Zealand. It makes this point in section 85, the regulatory impact statement by the government's own officials. Most of the money spent on gambling in New Zealand is spent on gambling machines, and substantial proportions of it by people who play machines frequently. New Zealand studies have found that gaming machines are associated with harm more often than any other form of gambling. End quote. There it is in black and white, a very clear statement that the government is imposing on New Zealand another 230 gambling machines that its own officials have told it cause more harm than anything else. And on top of that, the bonus of another 40 gambling tables. And it does, in section 91 of that report, quantify the impact that there'll be more than 8,000 New Zealanders who will suffer problems as a result of someone else's gambling. It'll impact, Mr Chairman, you've seen it. Every member of this chamber that has gone into an institution that offers gambling machines will see the poor, pathetic people stuck on those machines hour after hour as they spend the housekeeping money and they spend the money that they should be spending on their kids. Officials from Health and the Department of Internal Affairs said that it will have that sort of impact. In fact, the Department of Internal Affairs said it will affect something like 6,000 children. And the great irony of this is that those people on the benches over there will be the first to condemn the unfortunate individuals that suffer from gambling addiction for spending their money and depriving their kids, and then they'll take away the benefits that'll hurt the kids further, all the while they increase the millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars of profit that Sky City will make out of people who can't afford to fund Sky City and its exorbitant profits. If you want an international convention centre, either it pays its own way, or you put the bill on those who benefit most from it. You don't put the bill on the backs of those individuals that cannot afford to be gambling but are trapped by the nature of the machines that are set up particularly to keep people feeding money into them. It's rank hypocrisy to condemn the victims of gambling while you reach dirty deals that increase the number of machines, that increase the incidence of gambling. And that's what the officials say about that. Mr Chairman, the other point that I want to make about this is that the economic benefits of this program have not been demonstrated. The members of the Select Committee from the opposition side wanted to have Treasury, Internal Affairs and Health to come before the Select Committee to spell out what the costs and the benefits of this program might be. In the true spirit of National Party democracy, the Chair denied the right of Select Committee members to hear from those officials, to challenge the nonsense that Stephen Joyce talked about, 1,800 jobs. But we actually read the New Zealand Institute of Economic Research paper that says the figure was wrong. He didn't know where to put the decimal point. You know what the Institute of Economic Research says? The real number of jobs, net, long-term, was 18, Minister. 18, you're out by the nature of about 100%. 18 jobs permanently, not the 1,800, a factor of 100%. We oppose this bill.
It's my pleasure to speak for the second time this evening on this part of the bill. This is where we get in